Welcome back, and you're watching Commodity Champions, and we are talking about farming and the advent of technology here. So even as we talked about drones right now, but the agriculture sector in the Indian markets really is working much at its basic pace for much of the area. Technology is something that is not so easily accessible to the farmers. Yield and productivity is something that we keep talking about all the time. The irrigation is not up to the mark. What is your sense, Ravi, when it comes to agriculture? How do you see where we stand right now, and what really needs to be done from here?
Well, yield and productivity is basically the end result of, let's say, deficiencies that we have in our agricultural system in India. And you're definitely right that technology deployment has not been enough. We need to begin with developing new cultivars which are climate resilient. So that means we need to look at seeds which can tolerate the vagaries of the nature. Monsoon is not predictable. It has never been predictable to the extent that, okay, we know that second day it will be there or third day it will be there, and how much and where. While things have been accurate, you still can't control how much rain will fall where. So we need to plan for failure of the nature, and that is something we have not done. So, in terms of both seed development, and then we come to water management. Water management is another area where we have really lack basic infrastructure. Only I think about 45% of our arable land comes in the command area of canals. Within that also you would know that canals are, for example, heavily maximum number of canals are not lined. When they're not lined, the water seepage loss is very huge. Water gets withdrawn from the first segment of the canal in excess, so the people who are in the tail end don't get water. And then you still have about 55 to 60% of the farmers who depend on rain. What do you do about that? And then comes the mechanization aspect in terms of conducting the farm operations, beginning from, let's say, land prep to sowing to plantation to crop management, harvesting, post-harvesting. And we have to always remember that we are a small plot farming country. Our maximum 85% of farmers have, in practical, less than 3 acres of land. Within the 3 acres, again, they subplotted. So big machines are not available. So KisanKraft's focus right from beginning has been to focus on the small farmers. We have been expanding all over India product portfolio and geographic. And we want to help the farmers get affordable, appropriate machinery for every stage of the game. And they'll be able to rent it out. Go ahead, please.
That really is interesting, because, you know, we were talking to Mugilan some time back in the first segment, really, and while he talked about drones, his approach and market really is different. He's working with governments and he's working with bigger companies. My question to you really is about low-cost agriculture equipment here, because what really comes under that, and how much percentage of farmers do you think can actually afford that directly?
Okay, so all of my machines, even my most expensive machines, can pay for themselves in one season. And they do that primarily by reducing their cost of the work that they perform. And second, we expect that the farmers will deploy that machinery on a rental basis as well. We suggest it very heavily. I would say as high as 10% of my customers now are deploying those machines on rental to recover costs.
So when you talk about so, you know, when you talk about R&D and development, that would also mean that the cost of seeds would be increased here. While we are talking about technology, the other part is the affordability and accessibility for the farmers. How do you marry the two?
Okay, so for example, seed development costs. KisanKraft as a company, we think that there is definitely at the current prevalent prices of seeds, that, let's say, for example, rice, today you buy, let's say, seeds for, let's say, $40 a kg. If you're buying, I will sell you improved variety, which is aerobic, at 40 rupees a kg. So there will be no cost increase, but your input costs in total, labor costs, your pesticide costs, your seed rate will go down, and you will still get the same yield. So our focus is very, very conscientious about the farmer's affordability, and ultimately at the end of the day, what is at the yield that he'll get, and therefore what is the retained income of the farmer. We are very, very concerned about that. So that's something we keep in mind, and I think that a lot of people like us can do it.
All right, so coming to the policy point then and the government's push, what do you think is desirable from that? Because we have seen government trying to double farmers' income. MSP hike is one way. There are other pushes in sense of irrigation and so on and so forth that the government has been talking about and doing as well. But when it comes to what you are doing in this space, which is quite important because you're looking at affordable technology in farming, what is desired by you from the government policies right now?
So definitely government is sincere about trying to increase the farmers' income. We have some concerns in the way the policies are being executed. For example, let's say MSP. I'll just touch very briefly. The government has still not clarified whether it's going to be B2, what is going to be the basis of their cost of cultivation. Is it going to be B2? Is it going to be C2? Is it going to be C star? They have not clarified that. That should be clarified. Now, let's say, for example, policies encouraging R&D or in agriculture. One big problem, for example, we are facing is that even though the relevant act exempts field crop from NBA, NBA Act itself exempts field crops, which are for agriculture, still NBA is insisting that we need to get their approval. It is taking time. One application is taking 8 months for approval. That means I miss out seasons. Then they are charging me per variety that I'm trying to look at. If you access, you have to pay me. And after that, when I commercialize, I have to pay a percentage. We think that this is a policy which needs to be reconsidered, that this is impeding R&D. Similarly, for subsidy disbursement, we believe there is a major lacuna that the government has in the way it is implemented. We understand that agriculture is a state matter and therefore certain things have to be deferred, but when it comes to, for example, let's say mechanization or fertilizer subsidy and stuff like that, we believe that a lot of things can be done at the central level so that the approvals like validation, okay, this company is okay, this product is okay, can be done at the central level. And the state can determine who the beneficiaries are, how much to do, what to do, and that will reduce the process cost dramatically. Today, government needs to investigate why a lot of subsidy funds are being disbursed at the end of the financial year and not at the beginning of the crop season when a farmer really needs it. And this aids into a lot of difficulty the farmer faces. So R&D impeding the R&D by let's say wrong interpretation of NBA Act and implementation has to be looked at. Subsidy disbursement, the way they are doing it has to be looked at. We encourage DPT. We believe that DPT is great, but this thing has to be looked at. And then promoting the package of practice adaptations among the farmer is something that the government has to really go on war footing. Our farmers are still using mechanisms that were developed long time ago, like say hundreds of years ago, and they are not adopting new practices. Disbursement of scientific knowledge has to be done. Model farms have to be set up. Private sector can play a lot of role in that if the government allows private sector to cultivate agricultural crops, which right now it's not done.
Well, your point is well taken. This is something that we have been addressing for a longer time on how government perhaps needs to take and how it is very important to take the private partnership into the programs that they are doing. But, you know, my next point really is about the automation or the technology, would you say, as a part right now or a percentage of farms is used in India. What has been the kind of growth and what is desired? Can you give us a number given the kind of population or the kind of output India comes out with?
Well, if you say automation in true sense of the word, where basically, let's say we can reduce human intervention, I would say that that's mostly in the processing sector. It is not in the agriculture where you're talking about, let's say, planting, measuring crop health, measuring soil health, or even controlling irrigation with the knowledge of, let's say, soil condition. That is not done. So I would say that automation, if you say in agriculture, not including food processing, not including post-harvest processing, is negligible. And that is something we again need to do, and a lot of that can be done. Again, government will have to really look at some policy changes where, for example, today when I try to get a machine approved for quote-unquote subsidy, because a lot of the sales of mechanization is impacted by subsidy, it takes me anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get that machine tested by the 4 institutes the government has, because, for example, one of my machines is stuck for 1.5 years because they don't have the equipment. They don't have machines to test the engines, and so there you go. And so suppose I do, like you're talking about automation, so suppose I bring in IoT in that discussion, and I deploy very inexpensive sensors along with my cheap cultivators, which can measure, let's say, soil moisture. They can take pictures of the plant and determine what is the greenness, and that means I can figure out the stress or what is the chlorophyll content and determine what is the inputs that they need. It'll take me years before I can get it approved. So, you know, some things the government has to do, but definitely there are a lot of things that you and I have to do as well.
All right. You know, well, that's one part of it. But the way the country functions right now, I do understand that there are some companies that would rather work with FPOs rather than farmers directly, because FPOs together have some paying power, stronger presentation, etc. When it comes to that, how has that model worked for you? I mean, you said that your equipment is enough accessible, enough affordable that you can work with small or marginal farmers as well. But would you rather not work with FPOs instead?
Well, we have tried to work with FPOs in the past, but we have not had much success. They have their own restrictions on how they operate, and especially when you talk about asset purchases, then it becomes a bit of a tricky issue for them as well. So we have found it useful, much more meaningful if we reach out to the farmers directly. We still use, let's say, societies and stuff like that for conducting demonstrations or farmer education. But we as a company are focusing on directly educating the farmers. FPO model has not been very successful for us in terms of making sales. And we believe that FPO asset purchase is a problem for them.
All right, we get that. So every aspect that you look at, of course, there are those positives and negatives. Well, with that, though, we have covered all aspects of farming right now, to basic farming, which has been going on for decades right now, where farmers perhaps still depend on monsoons and basic ways of farming, to, of course, affordable technology, and on the other side, on drones as well. So that's a lot that is spread out when you look at farming in India there. But that's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions for you today. Thanks for watching.